Hi, everybody, and welcome to our HubGem webinar. So I am Amy Martos. I'm your Senior Marketing Executive here at HubGem, and today I am joined by the amazing Olly Featherstone, who is the AI Lead and CRM Consultant here as well. And he will be diving right in to take you through our webinar today.
Lovely. So let's kick things off then. So today's sort of topic is going to be all about AI, of course, as I'm the AI lead, and we're going to be sort of talking about your new AI team members utilizing a couple of different tools across the AI suite. So in terms of what we'll cover, we'll have a quick introduction to HubSpot AI. So for anyone that's, maybe doesn't have HubSpot right now and is looking to purchase it, or if you haven't explored the AI tools within your account yet, we'll also look at the new AI agents that were released this year at Inbound. We'll explore the Breeze Assistants, as this did get an update if you were previously using the Copilot sort of feature within HubSpot last year. We'll also touch on how you can build your own ones, and we'll give you a quick sneak peek at our masterclass package that will be coming out as a service that explores all of this in more detail, and then a quick piece of Q&A as well. So we'll start off with what is HubSpot AI. So for those, again, who haven't sort of got HubSpot or haven't explored it yet, what do we actually mean by HubSpot AI? For the most part, it's broken down into three sections, really. So you've got the agents, the assistants, and then what we'll call the generative AI, or sort of the other AI within the account. So your agents are sort of like your virtual team members. And the reason we say that is because they can actually act for you. You don't have to be present in order for the agents to actually perform tasks. And they don't just suggest sort of things like next steps. They actually, like I say, take action across HubSpot for you. So that could be creating some content, could be researching some of your records like companies, updating some of your CRM, and also just generally progressing any work that you've got, for example, a social post. You've then got your assistants. And if you previously used sort of Copilot before, this is sort of the upgraded version. But we still sort of refer to this as your sort of AI co-pilots. Really, they're there to assist you and help you as you do those tasks. The assistant is not doing things for you, but it's there to suggest copy, summarize records for you, give you insights on some of those with some next steps. Like I said, it doesn't act independently, but it is very useful. And then that sort of everything else in the account you'll see in some of the tools, the sort of areas of AI that can support, and that's what we'll sort of call the generative AI. So this can create new content for you from scratch, and is in many of the places, typically, of course, where you would be creating that content. So inside of your marketing emails, your landing pages, ads, blogs, but it's also there again to help with some of the summarization of records, and it can sort of take image-based prompts and any CRM context as well, of course, to sort of help you create that content. So we'll be focusing, of course, on the top two really today. But when we say AI at a HubSpot level, we'll be referring to one of these three things. So I'm going to run through some of the agents. We can't get through all of them in the session because there are quite a few in the account, but we'll run through some of the key ones that I think are definitely relevant to this audience. And we'll start things off with the social post agent. So again, this is one of those sort of new team members that you'll sort of be thinking of this as we go through these agents. And a lot of these things that we go through, they will be able to do without you sort of sitting down and watching it happen. They can do that independently. Now on the right, there's going to be imagery across all of these agents, sort of on the first slide. Really, that's sort of the way that the agent breaks down the tasks, just so you can kind of see the way that these agents actually start to think and process things. And in this particular example, like the name kind of suggests, really, it's there to help you create social posts. And of course, it will do things like match your brand tone that you can select in the settings. So it will sort of create those in your voice and in the style that you want. And it's also there to help repurpose content as well. And that's really useful for some of your long form content. So, for example, you might go ahead and make a really nice blog and use that blog to pull bits out to then create, 1, 2, 3, 4 social posts from that as well. In terms of how your teams are going to use it, of course, this will be more sort of marketing team focused, but this will be awesome if you need to quickly promote any of your events. Of course, it will also help you keep messaging potentially a little bit more consistent as well. If you're using this regularly, you'll start to create a bit of a process and a sort of a bit of a brand tone that's consistent across all of your channels. And the big thing here really for the teams is it's going to reduce that content workload. So you don't have to worry about starting from scratch every time you go ahead and make a social post, as well as a whole host of things around the strategy and your sort of planning for when you make these as well. So some example prompts, if you've already got HubSpot and you want to start to sort of utilize these right now, you could start off by saying things like draft a LinkedIn post for our open day, and then it will give some sort of clarifying details of what it might need for that, or turn this blog into 3 engaging social posts. It was another great one to save you time on that repurposing of the content. Now, we've also got on each of these some imagery just to kind of show you and highlight really ultimately what it can do and how it does it. So the image on the left is sort of showing you the output. So for this particular example, I actually ran through and asked it to give me some strategy and content ideas. And you can see there it sort of produced that table with all of the different sort of naming, the date that it might go out, the descriptions, and also of course, referring back to our lovely school portal here and exactly sort of the purpose of what that might be. From that point, of course, I can still go ahead and ask it actually to actually make these social posts in the account for me as well. But that sort of highlights that planning stage that it can do really nicely for you. And then the image on the right there is actually sort of how we start to set up these agents. So they are the actual instructions, basically the prompts, but in a bit more of a sort of longer format, really, for how we what this social post is actually going to do and kind of the results that we might expect. Now, these are to different degrees, depending on the agent, customizable as well. So if you see some bits in there that you're not, sort of maybe aren't relevant or you don't really want it to be doing, we can give additional instructions below this as well, and a few other tweaks and settings to set this up in exactly the way that we want to. So if we only want to use this for actually drafting the copy for the social post and we're not worried too much about this sort of strategy side, we can implement some of those instructions and prompts into this agent as well. Now, the next one we'll look at is called the customer health agent. And again, on the right side there, you can kind of start to see some of the thought process of one of the prompts that I've ran in the past to get a bit of an idea of sort of what it's doing. And of course, you can see that in your own portals as well when you run these. So it really just sort of gives a little bit more clarity about sort of the steps it went through and what it's doing when you actually ask it to do these things. So it's not just sort of click a button, end up with a result, and not really have the sort of knowledge in between of kind of how it's done that or maybe why it's done that. And that's also really useful for helping optimize some of your sort of agent prompts as well. But the customer agent or the customer health agent itself, what does it actually do? So this will be super useful to start to actually assess the engagement levels of some of your prospects. So, we've got sort of typically in the past, we would have used something like a lead score. You might have done that manually. You might have utilized lead scoring in HubSpot before. This takes it probably one step further in many ways because you don't have to actually really do any of the work to then sort of get that sentiment analysis and get that engagement level for each of your prospects. It can also alert you of declining activity as well. So if you want to run, maybe a couple of leads through the agent to sort of understand, have they dropped off, and actually are we still classifying these individuals in the right way? Again, you can be notified when that might happen. And the nice thing is it also just gives you a bit of an overview of your prospects as well. So that can be really useful if you want to sort of jump back in. You might have had a prospect that sort of inquired and maybe thought about applying a year or two ago. Maybe they weren't sort of didn't meet the requirements, or maybe their child wasn't old enough at the time, but you kept the record, of course, for those purposes. You can then rerun that through the agent and actually get a bit of an overview and sort of refresh yourselves, if you like, on all the activity you had with that individual. So use cases in there as well. Obviously, you're going to want to prioritize your prospective families that have the healthiest levels of engagement, the healthiest sort of lead scoring, if you like. You can also monitor your admissions journey in here as well. So there might be a particular point in the process where actually there might be a bit of a bottleneck, or there might be sort of something quite clunky that people sort of aren't maybe engaging with as much. And this can sort of help you start to sort of see those insights and perhaps even suggest some fixes should you sort of take that prompt further and kind of ask that question. And then ultimately that means you can sort of assess where you could intervene for better outcomes in the future as well. So you get sort of that full picture on a sort of individual basis, but of course you can also do that for the account as well. So again, if you want to start to jump in and utilize this now, some example prompts, you could show me contacts who haven't opened recent emails, could get a bit of a list going for you, a little bit of commentary on perhaps why it pulled them into that list. You could also summarize the contact health in your admissions pipeline or whatever sort of pipeline you have your deals in. And then you could also ask a bit more of a sort of broader account-wide question. What are the top risks this term or this particular sort of period in time that may be able to then pull out some deals that have stalled or some contacts, again, that are sort of unengaged but might have sort of live deals, and sort of provide you with all of that context in there as well. Now, again, on screen, you'll see sort of the sort of an example on the left, and then you've also got the instructions again on the right. So for this particular one that I ran on the left image here, you can kind of get a bit of a report or sort of see the format in the reporting that you can get. So you can see there that I've did a quick sort of health check on HubGem, our own sort of record in there. And it pulled out some sort of at-risk bits. You can see there it can go through sort of call transcript. You can see sort of why it's pulled out some reasoning for why it's at risk, what it's looked at. And this report goes on for a lot longer than that screenshot sort of going through. You can see their best actions at the bottom, some recommendations. You get all of that sort of data in there. And then again, on the right side, you can kind of see the instructions for how this was built out. And as with all the agents, we could customize this a little bit more as well. So it doesn't have to be sort of on the company level. We could do this on the contact level, the deal level. You can sort of customize where we're looking for this information there as well. Now, the next one, probably one of the most important ones if you're a marketer, is going to be the personalization agent. So there's no question that our prospects are expecting a personalized journey, but of course, personalization is something that takes time if you're doing that sort of manually. And of course, HubSpot does help in areas to help you with that personalization. For example, in your marketing email tool, you can add your tokens, which of course means that you can send sort of large volumes of emails and still have them personalized. But the agent is really there to not just sort of help you do that part of it and speed up the personalization. It's also there to make some recommendations as well, and potentially also sort of start to explore some segments or some sort of subsets of your audience, if you like, that you haven't thought of before as one of your segments or groups. So again, on the right, there's some just example there of sort of the steps that it's gone through to go ahead and sort of understand really how to structure this piece of personalization. But in terms of what it does, the big one, of course, is going to be creating that tailored content. So it just speeds up that process for you, of course, to sort of understand and create what you need to there. It'll also analyze current content for improvement. So you could run, a few of your emails through this tool and actually say, how could I have personalized this better? And it, of course, sort of view that and then give you recommendations. And if you want to start to do some A/B testing through some of these different ways of personalizing things like your emails, it can go ahead and sort of create variants for that as well. So you might have the original one that you created, run that through the personalization agent and sort of give it that context text of I'm doing an A/B test, make this one maybe more or less personalized or particular elements that you want to sort of test, and it can sort of do that work for you. In practice, of course, this is ideal for any of your sort of nurturing journeys, if you like, or that sort of lead generation piece. Like we sort of touched on, of course, prospects are expecting that personalized experience. So all you're really doing here is offering them exactly sort of what they want when they want it, but making that easier on your teams. And there's that sort of less workload to achieve this piece. So actually you're putting sort of less work into it and getting better results at the same time, which is always what we want. Again, if you want to start to utilize this one, some example prompts that we've got down there, write a personalized email nurturing our parents. Of course, you could give it some sort of subset of your audience there. Draft an engaging re-enrollment text message, if that's a channel that you're using as well. And then turn this first touched email into a follow-up. So actually, we can repurpose some of that content as well here, but still having that personalized sort of touch inside of that also. So again, a couple of examples with the actual sort of example on the left and the instructions on the right. This particular one, actually, I asked this to sort of give me a bit more of a process and a plan really for how I can start to sort of utilize segmentation a bit better. So that's sort of given me some examples, some findings, a little bit of data, and sort of I can then use that to maybe make my own content better. Or actually, what I could do, which would be a really clever thing, is sort of copy and paste its suggestions back into my instructions, so that it's kind of got the findings and it's got all of the sort of success metrics, if you like, that it's suggested for me, and give it back to the agent itself so it can draft the personalization even better for you. And then again, we'll touch on the instructions, of course, again, customizable here, so we can sort of give it the exact sort of role and goals and inputs that we need for our particular level of personalization as well. And the next one we're going to talk about is the customer handoff agent. Now, this one is actually really useful. So if you've got any sort of team members that unfortunately sort of end up leaving your organization and need to sort of hand over sort of essentially all the work that they're doing, the record they might be owners for, or of course, if you have a sort of almost traditional salesy process in a way where your sort of marketing team are going to be qualifying the leads and then passing them on to your admissions team, at some point in that flow, in either of those examples, you need to sort of pass that work on, pass those prospects or records on to the next team member. And of course, doing that can be quite an admin heavy process, really, and no doubt, unfortunately, lose a bit of context along the way. So this agent really allows you to do all of that in a much more seamless way, and it kind of pulls it all together for you. So again, in the image, you can kind of see what it goes through in terms of sort of pulling together all of the information. But really, if you've got any kind of handover between admissions to marketing, any sort of marketing teams that hand over to any sort of onboarding style teams as well, of course, that's going to mean that you just end up with team collaboration that is a lot smoother. This kind of does all of that work for you, and you just sort of do that handover rather than, having to spend a lot of time in sort of meetings, of course, sort of having to summarize or pull all of that data together manually so you can share with your team members as well. All of that kind of gets eliminated in many ways here. So again, if you want to sort of utilize this, some of the sort of prompts that you can sort of set out here. So you might want to create an onboarding workflow for parents if that's part of your process. And actually it can take all of those parents that you might be handing off or handing over and kind of create all of that for you. You could also draft a handover email as well. So if you're sort of sharing this, not necessarily in person or over a Zoom call or something like that, and you're actually emailing that information, it can not only find it, but then also, of course, sort of put it into that format and send it across. And then, of course, what handovers are scheduled today as well. So if it's, again, part of your process where you do sort of regular qualified leads into admissions, sort of handovers of those prospects, then you can do that, of course, on a lot more of a regular basis in there as well. Now, again, same imagery. So on the left there, we've got sort of, again, an example. It goes on for a lot longer again than that sort of screenshot shows, but ultimately that's sort of pulling together one of my sort of key contacts there that I might be handing over, pulls in a lot of the sort of key information at the top. You've also got below in the table that sort of starts to or cuts off there is also any of the deals that are associated to that contact as well. So you're not just usually going to be handing over sort of one record. There's going to be some associations in there as well for your child records, any companies as well that you might be sort of working with, feeder schools and such as. So that's really going to pull together sort of your full handover. All of the data from the CRM and certainly the key bits will be highlighted in there. You can ask it to put it in some sort of format then, however you sort of need to share it. And just like all of them, again, on the right side image there, we've got the instructions for the agent as well. So you can customize those for exactly sort of your workflow. So if you're not necessarily sort of got that regular workflow of marketing, qualifying the leads, passing it off to the admissions team for sort of further nurturing or personalized sort of comms and that type of thing, then you can, of course, include your version really of why you're using this sort of handover or handoff agent in there as well. So let's now move on from agents. Like I said, there are a lot more than just the ones we've had time to go through today, but they're some of the, I think, key ones certainly for our workflows in education. But you've also got the assistant within your HubSpot account. Of course, it's pretty much a standard sort of large language model. If you've used Gemini or ChatGPT, you want to just ask kind of HubSpot questions about your data. You've always got that in the top tab bar. But there are also, just like we've got with agents, there are other types of assistants that we can also sort of bolt onto our main assistant as well. We'll only touch on sort of one of them today. Again, another one really for the marketers out there, but this is the Breeze Brand Assistant. And this is a really powerful one. If you're going to start to actually utilize some of the generative sort of aspects and models within HubSpot. So if you are sort of using AI to draft content essentially for you, then this one is going to be the key for making sure that you're not having to do as much of that sort of rewriting of content or reprompting of content because it's producing things that you don't really or that you wouldn't typically produce or really want to use to fit your brand. So in terms of sort of what it is, ultimately all we're doing is sort of training this to write in our brand voice. And of course the tone that naturally leads to more consistency. And we can train this on, of course, sort of previous copy. So if we're already really confident that we've got sort of the style that we want to sort of continue using, it's really simple. You just sort of give it that and train it on that at those examples. But if not, if you want to sort of rework that a little bit, this is a nice opportunity, of course, to use the tool perhaps to plan out some of those aspects, and then again, sort of just update its instructions really on that. But it will still sort of learn tone and phrasing as well. So it's not, if you can still feed it ideas, you can still give it previous examples if you've got the ones that you wanted to sort of reflect and copy in many ways, and it will still sort of learn your style as you move through your journey with this tool as well. So naturally, your email drafts are going to be a huge one, your marketing emails, but also any of your sort of nurturing workflows at any point, any of the tools really that you use to help you convert those leads, whether that's an ad campaign, a social post, whatever it is really. And then of course, website copy as well. And even if your website isn't hosted through HubSpot and it's with an external sort of provider, you can still use the tool to actually generate the copy. And of course, you just copy and paste it onto the website, or use the ideas that you generate with the assistant to inform what you want to include on the web page as well, and then hand that off to the team that sort of does that. Now, just like with the agents, we've also got the ability to sort of give these assistants the instructions that we need. So full sort of customization here, actually probably more customization with the assistants than with the agents in terms of exactly what we want to see. And it's not just, again, the sort of instructions or the prompt, the main prompt that we've got here. There's also the different sort of ways that we might want to train the assistants, which is slightly different to the agents as well. So we can sort of upload, you might have your branding document for internal use, for example, of exactly sort of what font to use and colors and that type of thing, and where to put imagery on your emails. If you've got any of that, you can also upload that into the assistant as well. And then on the right side, or the sort of right image there, you can just see a really simple example. Create a social post targeted at independent schools. Really simple prompt, barely gave it really any context there. And it's just gone straight out and drafted that. And of course, that would be drafted if the screenshot continued in the sort of voice and in the way that I've set up the assistant using those instructions as well. But where this becomes even more powerful, of course, you can use the assistants that already exist in HubSpot. But this becomes even more powerful because you can build your own assistant from scratch. So this isn't just sort of editing and playing around with one of the default ones that you might want to bolt onto your account. This is actually from the ground up, build your own version of the assistant. Of course, using the same model generally as any of the others, but you've got full sort of customization over exactly what it does and what it's trained on. So in terms of sort of bits building this, setting this out, ultimately, of course, you want to sort of map out what you want to use it for. And this is the idea here, is that you tailor this, of course, for your workflow. So if you really need an assistant at a particular point in your journey, that might be from lead generation, that might be through to, once they've sort of submitted the application form, maybe you want an agent that sort of takes some of the information and summarizes it and passes that to the sort of relevant team members. Whatever part of the journey you feel like you kind of need an assistant alongside you, that's going to be, of course, the first step, is to sort of understand ultimately what you want to achieve with this. But then once you've sort of got that, of course, in terms of some of the reasons why you'd want one, saving time is, of course, the biggest one. You're never going to want to implement some AI to make your task more difficult or take longer. It's always going to be to save you some time for again, mostly some of the admin heavy bits, right? So our teams are there to sort of add value, build relationships. Our teams don't really need to be there to do some of the very basic admin work that AI can take on really nicely. Also, some consistency in your responses as well. If you've got something like a maybe sort of like a help channel or a contact us, where people can come through with some either sort of FAQ style questions, you get a lot of the same sort of questions come through, or you can get some really left field random questions that come through as well. Utilizing an assistant in that sort of environment can lead to more consistent replies, and of course have pre-prepared replies, or use some context from the CRM to give a better response as well. And like we mentioned, tailor that to your workflow as well. So you don't really want to be using AI for the sake of it. There needs to be a reason why you want to adopt it and add it into that part of the process. Now, in terms of how this works, along with the instructions, of course, that we sort of set out, there is sort of a training, if you like, for any of these AI models. And really that's just going to be giving it the not just the instructions, but maybe some of the documentation, some of the past examples. So you can say, look, I want you to sort of do this or create this piece of content in this way, feed it and upload some examples. And of course, it will then sort of take that on board, and ultimately that's sort of the style. Therefore, it will then produce the content in, or create those email responses, or summarize that record, whatever it was. Of course, there'll be a testing period in there as well. You never really want to deploy an AI tool without testing it, because you might have come up with something a little bit odd in the prompt, or it's not quite understood it, or you've not given it the right context, or whatever it might be. Make sure you're always doing that test, especially if you're using this for marketing. If this is going to be sort of customer facing content, if you like, public content, you want to make sure you're happy with its results in a number of different scenarios before you deploy it. And in terms of one of our sort of great examples that we want to sort of highlight here as well, something like an event inquiry assistant. So if you're regularly running different types of events, and you've perhaps got the same sort of families turning up across multiple events, you could look at creating an assistant that sort of helps you manage some of the comms creation, maybe some of the workload when your sort of forms come in. You can maybe ask the assistant sort of some questions about those families. You could even create agents, of course, off the back of that do some of the work automatically for you, and use the assistant for other things here as well. But a really good one where you've got sort of an admin heavy process, you've got sort of time constraints, of course, because the event's going to happen on a particular day, and you can take some of that workload off of your teams. So in terms of how to actually build these, again, just some sort of screenshots on exactly sort of what we can customize outside of just that massive sort of text box that we saw, giving it the prompt and kind of the instructions. There are also a couple of additional bits that we can do here as well. The first thing to sort of highlight with those with the nice sort of puzzle pieces there as well is kind of the way that you want to go about this in terms of creating it, because we're doing this from scratch, of course, remember. So we don't have that sort of sort of predefined assistant that we can just sort of tweak and customize. We are doing this from the beginning of the process. So that quite nicely illustrates really the sort of bits that I was talking about on the previous slide, where you need to define why you're using this assistant, or why you think you need an assistant, before you just go ahead and install all of them and make your own one and share this with the team. There needs to be sort of a very clear reason why you need it, and also a very clear sort of what is the assistant there for, and what is my team still there for. At no point do we ever want these agents and assistants essentially replacing your team members. We want them to enhance the job that your team is doing. So defining that's really important. The sort of points 2 and 3 on there, of course, are again in many ways just as important, because that is the sort of training piece and referencing back to any of your context and examples of exactly what you needed to do. And then the testing piece, again, we never want to sort of build these AI tools, especially if it's the first one you've made. Don't just sort of build it and just assume it's going to work exactly how you sort of intended it to. Definitely a testing period in there, run some scenarios through it, ask some questions, if it's a sort of a customer facing element there as well. Ask some questions, submit some forms, do some tests to see exactly what it does. But the images on the right are sort of the additional tweaks as well that we can assign to some of these. So as well as that big prompt that we saw, we've also got some instructions here, so we can actually sort of define what it can access. So these assistants can browse the web. So if you've got an assistant set up to help you sort of do some research, for example, you can sort of check that box, and it can reach outside of just your HubSpot data, and of course browse the web just like really any LLM can. And then you can also restrict the ability to actually read your CRM records. So there might be some examples where certain team members, maybe you build an assistant for them, and perhaps they shouldn't really or don't need to have access to that sort of sensitive information that you might hold against your child records in the CRM. So you can also check that box, maybe for the marketing team, for example, if you only want to give them an assistant to create some copy, and they shouldn't be looking at that sort of information or have access to it. Again, you can sort of customize that in there. You've also got the what this assistant knows piece, and this is where you can add those knowledge bits and those sort of context and those previous examples you might have. Quite a lot of sort of default bits that you can include. So things like your brand, you can set up your ideal customer profiles in HubSpot settings. You can include your sort of products and services as well. So if you're making sort of social posts or marketing emails, promoting a particular course or service, it's got that information every time you sort of run that prompt. But you can also add your own knowledge in there as well. So if there's, like I said, documents that you've previously got for sort of brand guidance, you could include that in there, and really anything else that you need for context. And then the image sort of at the bottom right there, you can also create conversation starters as well for your team to start to use them. So for a team that haven't used large language models in the past, or that sort of chatbot style interface, and of course, if they're sort of new generally to sort of utilizing AI, you can create these conversation starters, which are really just sort of ways that you can sort of predefine prompts, if you like, that you can give to your team when you sort of roll this out, so they have a bit of a starting point. Because I'm sure there'll be sort of teams out there, there'll be individuals out there that are maybe a little bit apprehensive about starting to use AI, haven't used it sort of right at the start, so maybe you feel like you've been left behind a little bit as well. So those conversation starters are a really nice sort of idea for any of those team members. They can literally click on those prompts when they're then using the assistant, and it will just do that action. So if they've got sort of 2 or 3 things they need the assistant for, you can include those as your conversation starters, as your prompts. Now, in terms of sort of triggering many of these AI models using workflows, and we also want to touch on credits here as well, because this does form part of the sort of whole AI piece. So for anyone that's sort of currently using HubSpot, you'll know, or hopefully know, all about workflows. And you may have seen in the last couple of months or so a sort of new section appear, which is the AI section. For those who still don't have HubSpot and are maybe looking at purchasing it as well, Workflows is the automation tool within HubSpot. So if I want to go ahead and send someone a confirmation email when they submit my event sign up form, that's where I kind of build those automations to happen, is within inside of the Workflows tool. And this now has sort of unlocked some ability for us to utilize AI actions in here as well. So these can be used to trigger a model. You can trigger some of the summarize functions. And one of the really cool ones is you can actually make use of an external LLM, which is the bottom sort of action in that list. So you can actually send out these sort of responses or the questions you might have to a ChatGPT or a Google Gemini, or a Claude, for example. So really powerful stuff in here. But ultimately, this is there to again speed up some of your processes. So if I wanted to go ahead and run the data agent, for example, to go ahead and do some research for me, or to go ahead and fill out some of my smart properties with some data that I'm missing, although of course in itself the AI tool doing that for us saves a lot of time, I still have to go in and start the process. Whereas with workflow actions for some of these AI tools now, I don't even have to be the one that presses the button to start the AI tool, to save me all of that time, saving even more ultimately. So you might build out some workflows where you get to a certain point, maybe you've just used a workflow to create a brand new record with some information from a form submission, and actually maybe you're missing some of that data. So you want to go ahead and run the data agent to go ahead and fill that in, or maybe go ahead and research some company news about this new company that you've just added to the CRM, and add all in that sort of missing data. Now, next to some of those actions and throughout the account, when you start to use some of the AI tools, you will see that little credits logo, that sort of 2 coins it kind of looks like. And you'll also see that there on the Your Credit screen, where you can add credits. Now, some of the AI tools utilize this sort of new payment, new billing method, if you like, called HubSpot credits. Now, you will see for existing sort of accounts, when you go into the sort of your accounts, or have a look at your subscription page within your account, you'll see you do have some HubSpot credits each month. So this is something that's sort of bundled in. Depending on your subscription type, you will see you have some credits to spend. You will have, of course, more or less, depending on whether you're Enterprise, Pro, Starter, and sort of what packages you've got. So that does allow you at least a bit of a starting point to start to explore some of these tools, but you can add additional credits if you need to as well. And what these credits are really designed to do, it is, of course, AI tools, generative tools do cost a lot of money on the back end for businesses and service providers. And what this really does is allows you to start to utilize your HubSpot data, your CRM data, and make use of some of these more advanced sort of models and generative AI tools, with a relatively low barrier to entry. Many of these cost about 10 credits per sort of action, or per run, if you like, of that tool. A few of them will take 100, depending on the tool, and you can find a lot of that information out on HubSpot's website. They do break down every single sort of AI tool that will use a credit and how much they use. But just something to be aware of when you start to get stuck into this. If you're looking at some of these agents or some of these workflow features, and you're in your account and you've seen a few cool things as well that you want to start to use, do be aware that some of them will use credits. And that means that depending on budgets, of course, it won't be sort of an unlimited use case tool. You will have to sort of factor in how many times you'll use that tool each month and how many credits you currently have. So after sort of summarizing all of that, and there's a hell of a lot more that we could look at as well, but we wanted to sort of break that down, especially for the agents and the assistants, the more sort of advanced tools, if you like, in HubSpot. We wanted to break that down into its own service, because if you're looking at sort of adopting HubSpot for the first time, throughout onboarding, there's a hell of a lot of the basics to learn. We definitely won't have time to get to some of the more advanced AI features, nor would you probably have the capacity to do it either. And we've also, of course, got people who've used HubSpot for many years and just haven't sort of looked into the AI stuff. So there's this sort of plan that we've created that sort of fits both of those camps and really focuses on the agents and the assistants. So just wanted to go through really briefly what this looks like, and sort of it follows on nicely from what we've looked at with those agents and assistants. So we're introducing a new AI masterclass. And really, this is about sort of building those assistants and utilizing those agents, and also tailoring them to what you actually need. So there are a lot of agents and a few assistants in the account that are pre-built by HubSpot. And you might be looking at that and thinking, which ones do I need? Do I need all of them? Should I start to try and, jerry rig some of these into my workflows? Or actually, is there only really two or three that I need, and I can customize them with a lot of detail and really make them work? So the plan will focus on sort of a 6-week deep dive. Ultimately, we'll go through sort of the full Breeze suite, all of the agents, or at least all of the agents that are relevant to what you want to accomplish with AI, and go through those sort of education examples as well to build a bit of a clearer picture. We'll have 1 hour together every week, where we'll go through that sort of training. We'll do some of that sort of action-based learning as well. So it's not just you sort of sitting there for a whole hour just watching me go through what the tool can do. And of course, this is sort of built for team adoption as well. And that's what we see as one of the biggest barriers really to AI. I think a lot of people look at what it can do and think this is really cool, and I can see where this might work in my sort of day to day, but I don't know where to start. If you're sort of a leadership or an SLT, I don't necessarily know how my team are going to react to this. We cover sort of those kind of things as well. And then we've got that hands-on support. So if we go through some of the agents and you want to adopt them, we've also got sort of 2 hours completely at a sort of no sessions, no calls. We've got 2 hours of implementation to support you with that, and setup of your own assistants if you need to as well. So it's really been designed, like I said, for teams who want clarity and confidence and some practical AI knowledge, without all of that overwhelming sort of stuff that can come with it. Now, in terms of sort of, again, a bit more of a breakdown of the journey that we go through on this plan, ultimately, we want to give you the opportunity at least to sort of learn everything that you need to about the agents and the assistants, and of course, that implementation support. But this is also tailored depending on ultimately what you want to achieve. So we're not going to spend an hour on the customer handoff agent if you don't need that. It's going to be very much sort of tailored to where we can improve your workflows. But the first 3 weeks, we'll look at all of the agents where relevant, so you can sort of get a flavor of what's possible across the board, and then of course adopt the ones that you need. We then spend week 4 sort of looking at the assistants, so all the pre-made ones that you can bolt onto the general sort of large language model chatbot style interface. Week 5, we'll go through how you can build your own assistant in a lot more detail than we did today. So if none of that agent assistant sort of fits the bill, we can build you your own one. And then that week 6 piece is where we take sort of all of the ideas that we've spoken about and learn, and actually which of these do you want us to support your implementation, and we can sort of set that up in the right way and help you with a bit of testing as well if needed. So that is everything for today. Have we got any questions, Amy, off the back of any of that?
Yes, we do. So obviously you did touch on obviously creating your own agents. So just on the back of that, if we can kind of go back, how do you actually add the agents to my account?
Yeah, so the agents are all in what is now known as sort of a new space really in HubSpot called the Breeze Studio. So this is now where you can sort of come in. It's kind of like the HubSpot marketplace really for your integrations and app providers, but specifically for the agents. And you can find your assistants in there as well. So if you navigate to Breeze Studio, you'll see all of the sort of pre-made agents that the HubSpot currently offers. A lot of them, if not all of them, are still in beta, although available to everyone. You just have to install them through the Breeze Studio, and then you can go in there and set them up for whatever you need. That's also the place where you'll find the sort of ability to build your own assistant in there as well.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more. So is HubSpot Assistant, is it better than the likes of like Chat GPT or Google Gemini?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they're all very similar in terms of the style. So it's all sort of a chatbot interface. They're essentially large language models. They can all access the internet. They can all do some research for you, that kind of thing. Where the HubSpot assistant is better than those two, and it won't be better at everything, but where it is better is where you're asking questions about your CRM data. So you can't just log into ChatGPT and ask it how many deals have I got in my pipeline because it doesn't have that information. So anytime where you want the insights from your data, no question the assistant is going to do a better job of surfacing those results, of course. You can use a mix of all of them though. I'd never recommend just one. If you wanted to do some more in-depth research or ask some more broad questions about who knows your processes, maybe you want to brainstorm some process optimization or something, then see what ChatGPT and Gemini and the assistant come up with, or any of the others, and sort of use the different ones for different use cases. But certainly, if you've got CRM insight questions, make use of the assistant.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Perfect. Okay, well, that's us done with the questions. So, yes, thank you, Ollie, as always. So incredibly informative. So, yes, next steps in terms of follow-up. Please do subscribe to our marketing and admissions blog. There is an abundance of kind of information out there, also to do with the AI, especially Ollie's got a great series at the moment on the new kind of HubSpot loop marketing, and of course all your other kind of HubGem, well, HubSpot queries. So yes. We will be providing you with some wee resources on your follow-up email as well. And please do keep an eye out for our upcoming Hug sessions. We do have we are HubSpot partners for the education with HubSpot. So we have Hug sessions and we also have more HubGem specific webinar sessions as well coming out. So yeah, and we also have our Hidden Gem, which is our new subscription site. So we would advise you to go on and have a wee look at that, where there's kind of more in-depth deep dives and product updates for you. So yeah, that's our new subscription website as well. And we also have webinars there as well. So yeah. And next, we also have some upcoming, no, not upcoming. So Ollie, if you move on, that's great. Yeah, we have next year our in person, our live event, which is huge. We are so excited to share this with you all. So yes, please look out for that. That is going to be on the 22nd of April. So please do scan that wee link and have a look at our wee landing page, which gives you so much more information. We have great speakers kind of already lined up for you. We've got Nicola at No Fluff, we've got Gio at HubSpot. We actually have HubSpot reps coming up. We're going to have a list of speakers, and obviously HubGem as well. We're going to be there with a lot of our consultants and specialists there. Ollie's going to be doing a wee chat as well with our other consultant guy, all in AI. So if that's more you want to kind of dive into, but yes, look out for more on that. That is super exciting and we cannot wait to share. So yeah, thank you again, Ollie, for that. And yeah, we will send you out some emails with the recording as well in case you missed it and if you want to refer back to. So perfect. Thank you so much.